So here we are inside Vectorworks 2019. You need to make sure that you're running the latest service pack, which is currently 3.1, because there have been some updates to the MVR features. So I'm just going to give you a quick run through on the scene that I've got in here. This is just a test scene purely for testing the MVR features, so it just has a variety of different types of instruments. It's your typical sort of setup with some risers, some stage, some truss, some wiggly lights, some video products, etc. It's important to understand about the layer system and the class system, because when you import into Cinema via the stage plugin using MVR, you get some options about how you want to, where you want these layers to end up and where you want your classes from Vectorworks to end up inside Cinema. So it's important that you get this right from the start. Now this drawing's done in a typical way where, for example, I've got my areas of different types of equipment done as layers. So for example, I've got all my lights on a lighting layer, I've got all my truss on a truss layer, etc. My class system is where I generally drill down and have a bit more detail there. So for argument's sake, we've got lighting, we've got floor lighting, and we've got flown lighting. Now if this was a proper drawing, I'd probably have a lot more classes in here. Lighting might be divided up into, say, fixture type, or it might be divided up into locations like front truss, mid truss, etc. But yeah, generally you would have a lot more classes here. So it's important that you get the organisation of your drawing right and you understand how it's going to end up in Cinema to give you a lot more flexibility and better speed of work inside the Cinema side of things. A couple of things to notice in this drawing. One is that we've got some focus points in here. As you can see here from the 3D, various lights are pointing to various focus points. That pan and tilt information will come across into the stage plugin fixtures, so it's often quite useful if you just want to do your focusing inside Vectorworks and then have everything ready to sort of go inside Cinema. There's a few different items in here. For example, there's some risers using the standard stage deck tool. There's some truss, which is all from the truss library inside Vectorworks. I've thrown a couple of 3D objects in just so you can see how that mesh comes across. There's a variety of video products, a variety of lights, etc. The drape is using the soft goods tool as well. So it's all pretty much standard stuff. Now there's something to be aware of here, because things won't work perfectly. There's definitely going to be some rotation issues on these Fatrons and on these Skeptrons here. There's also going to be an issue on these Mac Auras down the side here. We're still looking into fixing that, but predominantly most things come in the right way, as they should do. You'll see here these verticals of video panels. The reason they're different is really to show how things can end up being imported differently via MVR. So they're both the same product on the left and the right here. So if I look in my resource browser, you'll see 2-row black onyx 2.8mm. The ones on the right here are what I'd call a proper sort of plug-in object. The ones on the left are actually a 2D 3D symbol. When I select here, I've got a 2D 3D symbol, and when I select the ones here, I've got a proper LED screen. That's going to make a difference when it comes into the stage plugin, so you just need to be aware of stuff like that, and there's often a bit of trial and error. So we've got our drawing. All we need to do is file, export, and export MVR. If you don't see export MVR, that's because you need to add it to your workspace via the tools, workspace, edit current workspace. So export MVR. It gives us a couple of different options, but I'm just going to leave it to export all the data and the geometry, all the objects in the drawing. It gives us a checklist, and there's some GDTF info there, but I'm just going to click OK. I've already saved this one, so I'll just replace that. This drawing is about 10 meg, and the MVR file ends up being about 2 to 3 meg. So it'll export the objects. Again, it's not a very big drawing, so it happens relatively quickly. But now let's hop over into the stage plugin inside Cinema, and then let's import this MVR file. So here we are inside Cinema. We're just going to take the MVR file that we exported from Vectorworks and drop that into Cinema. We can see down here it's starting to go through all the information inside that MVR file, and shortly it'll all be loaded up. Now the first thing you get is the import options. There's a few different settings here. Some are self-explanatory. Do you want to import just the fixtures, the scene? Do you want to use instance objects? You may or you may not do. There's a few little issues still with this instance objects, but I will tick it. The other option is you could just, from Vectorworks, export all your geometry as a Cinema 4D file, and then you could merge that in and you'd get a slightly different layer object structure here. But that's something worth experimenting with. The two key ones here are the Cinema 4D layer system is how you want to use it. So in this case we've got a few choices. We can choose to ignore it, or we can use the classes we had inside Vectorworks can now become Cinema 4D layers, or the layers we had inside Vectorworks can become Cinema 4D layers, or we can use a stage storage defined layer, which is where inside the stage storage you can set a fixture to be on a layer when you import it already. So I'm going to leave it on the class system because that is where I'll have the most control. The next part is the object folder structure. So it's this part here. So essentially, when everything comes in, how is it going to be collected inside stage containers? Now again, I'm going to leave it on classes because that will probably give me the most control. The next thing is the fixtures. We can see what we've got, the types of fixtures, and it will automatically do a little bit of searching and try and do the best match. If it can't find a match, then it won't. It will leave a blank spot there, and then you can, for example, tick on it, and then you can search through your user library. It doesn't search through the online library, it only searches the user library. So you need to make sure that you've got everything you need in your user library before you can allocate it to a fixture here. The next thing is whether something is hung or floor standing. Obviously this Mac Aura, it's a floor fixture which is from the actual Martin Vectorworks library, and they have a floor product. I know that these Skeptrons here with the round diffusers on, I also know they're sitting on the riser, so they're in a floor or a standing item, but the rest of them should be okay, I think. The last tab is not functional at the moment, so you can ignore that. So we'll just click on Import MVR and we'll give it a few seconds. It imports all the materials that we had inside Vectorworks. Now, I didn't assign specific materials to the Vectorworks file, it's more just that solid colour thing. You obviously get your stage materials, which are part of the fixtures, but you're probably going to be texturing inside Cinema anyway, so a lot of these could be deleted or overwritten. The next thing I want to look at is the layer system. So you can see here under layers, it's an import of the MVR, and essentially what you're seeing here is exactly what we had in the classes inside Vectorworks. So if I wanted to turn off my flown lighting down the bottom here, I can do that there. So this is what's going to give me a lot of control and to be able to quickly turn things on and off and navigate my stage scene very quickly. The containers within the objects side of things, again, this started to look at what we had for our classes. So if we go to our lighting flown, we can see that we've got quantum washes in there and axioms in there and some quantum profiles that are down the sides here. We also have a meshes container. Now there's various, I'll just sort these alphabetically. There's various different items in here. Some will use the instances, some will not. It really depends on what it is that we've imported. So if I look under the stage system, again, let me just sort that. I can see that, for example, here there's some 1 meter truss, various different types of trussing, etc. And these are what are driving some instances. So if I go to my floor truss, here you'll see that I've got some FD34 1 meter, and that is instancing from this item down here. Now, not everything will come in as an instance. So for example, we've got the audio monitors down here. They're not doing any instancing, and that's because they're just some geometry at the moment, but there's still work being done on the plugin to make this more efficient and more accurate. So we will see some changes there. You will notice that some of these fixtures have not come in correctly, and that's these auras on the side here. They just essentially need some rotation put on them, and it's these skeptrons here and these factrons here. We're still working on getting that working properly. The skeptrons on the riser are the ones that we put to the standing position on the import. If we didn't do that, they would be upside down, but essentially I can go and grab all those Skeptron 10s that are on that riser, and in the Vectorworks drawing we actually had a 50mm diffuser on them, so the tube one, so I can just pop that on and those are good to go. Essentially you'll see all the fixtures are pointing towards their focus points, or most of them are. These quantum washes are not. There's a slight issue there, but most things are pointing where they should be pointing. I could just click render now. Obviously it's all going to blow out with white light, so I won't do that. I'm just going to make some quick changes on these LCD screens. At the moment they've just come in as geometry, but what I want them to be is proper LCD screens. So what I'm going to do there is just select all of those because they're not being instanced. I shall go into my stage storage. I know that there are some NEC panels, and then I shall just replace those, and then now inside here I've got the right products in the right position. So if we wanted to, we can now grab some fixtures. So for argument's sake, let's just take some of that flown lighting. Let's just grab those axioms. If I wanted to, I can change the colour of those. Let's just make them red for argument's sake. Let's stick a gobo in there. We can grab hold of the tilt of that, and then we'll fan them all out like that. Turn my quantum profiles down. My quantum washes are turned off. I'll turn my X4s off, which are on the floor. Just so we've got a little bit less light in there. And those auras that are on the floor, I should just turn them off for the moment and then render. So there you go. Have a play. Enjoy.